Hi YouTube, today I am actually going back to the video that I created first and was mentioning on how to do a budget and how to set up a budget, and I suggested that you go out and basically collect a year's worth of transactions, or as long a period as you could of transactions, and look at those transactions to try to determine what you spend on average on food, just all your different expenses. If you could take like a year worth of transactions, and what I had suggested was to, most software allow you to dump them into Excel. Like I have Bank of America for my bank, and I can go in and download all my transactions and then put them in an Excel spreadsheet, or some free software that is a spreadsheet, like a Google Sheets or something, and then basically give every single expense a category, and then determine how much you spent in the previous year, 6 months, 3 months, just to try to determine what on average you're spending your money on. The reason I suggested a year is because a lot of times there are transactions that you do during the course of the year and you don't even remember them. So for me, for example, I have a Costco membership, so that is something that I pay for only once a year, or my water bill, which is only every 3 months. So there's a lot of expenses that we don't have on a monthly basis, but we still need to include those expenses. So it's good to try to get like as much of a big period of expenses as you can. So I suggest a year, because obviously it would include almost all of your expenses. So what I had suggested was to do that. So the next step, after you've gotten all of this information together and you know what you're spending approximately, is to actually sit down and create an Excel spreadsheet and write down every single expense that you found. So I'm going to show you an example of a sample budget that I made, and I'm going to walk you through that. Okay, so this is a sample budget that I made to show you as an example. The first thing I want to explain is there is a column across the top that says weeks. And the reason that column is there is I've actually calculated how many Fridays there are in any month. Now, the way I grocery shop and buy my gas is that I do it on Fridays. So I calculate how many Fridays there are in a month to help me determine how many weeks of groceries I need to buy and how many weeks of gas I need to purchase. So in some weeks, obviously there's 4, in some weeks there are 5. So I basically calculate that number, and then I use that to determine, how many weeks of gas I'm going to need. So I'm just dragging that across for the whole year and determining how much. Let's take, for example, the amount of money spent on groceries. I've budgeted $125 a week for groceries. So in this month, it's actually looking up at the formula of how many weeks there are and multiplying the $125 times the number of weeks. So obviously this would be $125, and then in the month that there's 5 weeks, it would be $625. So that's basically why that is up at the top, calculating how many weeks there are, which is actually a number I just key in. The rest of these are like for example, gas and electric. I have actually, through my gas and electric company, we can sign up for something called a budget plan, where they calculate your gas and electric usage for the entire year and spread it over 12 months. And so I actually prefer that, because it keeps my monthly bill on like I know what to expect. It's not like it's coming up and down based on the weather. So these are just my expenses that like I said, this is a sample budget. This is not really my expenses, but I've kind of used, my own budget to come up with this. I have a dog, so I'm purchasing dog medicine, and I buy TurboTax every January to get ready for doing taxes. So this basically takes the total of expenses that I have, and then this is the income that I've keyed in. And I purposely chose to make sure that that this month it's showing a negative amount, and actually really a lot of the months it's showing a negative amount. I kind of wanted to show a budget where the person doesn't have enough money to pay the bills. The reason I asked you to do a budget for the entire year is so you could figure out which months you do not have enough money and which months you do have enough money to pay your bills. And in our example, in the month of January, there isn't enough money. It's short by $24.50. Same thing in February, it's short, March is short, but in April you have enough money. And the reason I wanted you to do a budget for the whole year is so you can see which months you have money. Because if you're mindful of the months that you have money, you can plan for the future and actually set aside that money. What most people do is if they have money left over at the end of April, they just spend it. They're like, okay, I didn't spend all my money, so let me spend the rest. But then when you get to May, there isn't enough money. So part of the reason we're doing this exercise is to determine when you don't have enough money. And on the months that you do have enough money, you need to start setting it aside for those future months. So that's the main reason I feel like it's a good exercise to do that and figure out. And then also look at the months that you don't have enough money and figure out, well, what is there that I could possibly reduce so I can make sure that I pay, I have enough money to pay all the bills for that month. This spreadsheet basically takes all of the expenses that were in the January column and gives everything a date. And this is very important because this is how you're going to be tracking your budget on a monthly basis. The most important thing I learned from Dave Ramsey was I had created a budget, the spreadsheet that I just showed you, but I wasn't really living my budget. I said, I'm going to spend $500 on groceries and I'm going to spend $200 on gas. But then I just went out and bought whatever groceries I needed. I didn't really think about how much am I spending? Am I staying within that budget? So this way, I've actually taken all the expenses. And if you look, I've actually put down like the groceries. I've given everything a date. So this, in the month of January, Fridays are the 7th, the 14th, the 21st. So I've basically given everything a date, and any expenses on here, I've said this is the date that they're coming out. And then I have a column off to the side, which actually the first cell over here is an amount that I'm assuming is that your beginning balance. Obviously you might have zero coming in, but I'm just, for this example, I'm assuming you have like $499.92. And then you start paying all these bills and you're not getting paid until the 15th. The reason I did this is because I wanted to show you how you are going to go negative on this date. And most people are pretty oblivious to the fact of how much money's coming in, when they will have enough and when they won't. And so this is really going to help you get a handle on your future, the rest of the month, and determine, okay, if I spend all this money these days, all of this money gets spent, on the 14th, I am not going to have enough money. And so this will help you figure out that in the future, you actually need to change something. Maybe there's things on here that you can delay, purchases that you can delay, maybe the bills you can't delay, though it's possible you could call your gas and electric company and say, can I pay the bill a few days later? But this will help you figure out that you're not going to have enough money, and maybe if you don't need groceries, let's say you have a lot of food in your freezer already, you don't really need to go out and spend the $125. So this is basically going to help you determine future expenses or when you're not going to have enough money, and it'll help you determine that maybe these are things you need to put off. Maybe these are purchases that you can do without. So another option that you have is that you could possibly deposit some extra money into your bank account. Say you have a couple $100 in your savings account, you would put that money in here so that it would cover any time that you're short. Obviously in the beginning, if you're really short on cash, that's probably not going to be an option. And when I first started, that was not an option. So really all I could do was move things around. And in the beginning, you might even have to pay a bill late because you just know that you don't have the money. But this is a better option than than paying the bill and having the check bounce. So that's a worse option, because now you probably owe a fee to the gas and electric company and to the bank. So this makes you at least more aware. And that's kind of what I'm trying to really teach on this lesson, is that you need to be aware of your money. And this way you actually know when your bills are due and what amount of money you will or will not have. So that's like a very important lesson, I think, to be aware of your money and to know your financial situation, because most people are not even aware that they're not going to have enough money or how much money they will have. They're just kind of putting the money in the bank and writing checks or paying bills and hoping for the best, which is, as I mentioned, the system I was using. And when the first month that I followed this plan and I should see, oh my gosh, I'm going to be short this amount of money, I can't pay this bill on this date, I'm going to have to delay this, or I'm going to have to buy less groceries, or whatever are things I needed to do to adjust my expenses. And as I mentioned later on, I just finally got a hold of my expenses and was able to save up enough money that I could put the extra money into my checking account, and then I knew that I had enough money to cover the bills. And at the end of the month, I just made sure that, let's just say, for example, I put in extra $500. I just made sure at the end of the month that extra $500 was always sitting there for the next month, so that I'm not spending that extra $500. It's just in there to cover any unforeseen expenses, or if a bill is due before I get my pay. So that's kind of the lesson for today, really, is to get yourself a budget together and start looking at this on a monthly basis. We'll go over this some more, but I just kind of wanted to put out a video to explain what I do. And this is kind of what I do. I create the budget for the entire year, and then I take it down to each month, and I look at each month. But it's just a good lesson to even look at the whole year. It's kind of sometimes sad to look at your budget and say, all right, if I look at the entire year, I don't have enough money to pay bills any month. But unfortunately, it's a sad situation, but it's also something we have to face, and we have to become aware of it. So the first really step in fixing the problem is to acknowledge that there is a problem. I hope this video was helpful to you, and I hope me walking through the steps that I take on my budget is something that will help you create a budget for yourself. I would love to hear from you. I would love to answer any of your questions that I can. I hope you will like and subscribe to my channel, and I will continue to put out more content. This is something I'm extremely passionate about, doing a budget and living on a budget, and I would just love walking alongside with you on this journey. Thank you very much for watching.